Welcome to my major final project for communications media, the Passive Portfolio Podcast, with my co-host, Wes.
Hi, I'm West. I am a currently enrolled sophomore studying biology with a minor in studio art.
Passive Portfolio Podcast is a show where me and West, we sit down, chat about artwork we've made, we're both artists, give each other critique and compliments, and overall talk shop about the joy and anguish of being hobbyists / studying / suffering artists. I'm Samira, and I am a current hobbyist / part-time business artist. I do commission work, and my plans for secondary education primarily include art schools around Canada. This episode, we're gonna be taking it slow, kind of coming into it. We'll be talking about the struggle of trying to make art look unique compared to everyone else around you, especially when you have a lot of artist friends. Pieces we got experimental on, and trying to figure out what we want our art to look like. We'll be showing 2 pieces today. We will be for every other episode, one of mine and then one of West's. We'll talk about our experience making them, give each other commentary, stuff like that. This is my piece, if West, you want to pull it up as well. I am a big fan of Super Mario Brothers, one of my favorite pieces of media, like, ever. And I actually found this old piece of unfinished artwork in one of my folders, I think a couple days ago, just sitting in my drive, kind of rotting away, which is so sad because I was looking at this and I realized, like, oh, this is really, really cute. I clearly decided to go with a simpler, kind of cutesier style for this piece. You'll see over the course of this show, I like a bit of detail work in my stuff, like some close contact. Yeah, I was kind of surprised how well this went, to be honest. I really struggled to simplify my art style. I think I'd say my favorite parts of this, I really love the colors. I quite like colors a lot. I don't know how much you care for colors, West, if you want to hop in.
I mean, like, when I was learning how to do art, a lot of my pieces, I didn't really give a lot of time to colors, but it's something I've really grown to appreciate as I've sort of evolved with my art process, especially through knowing you.
Clarification, Wes and I have known each other for, like, 4 years. We've been artists this entire time. Like, we've art to art transmission. He definitely focuses on a different aspects of art than I do, and vice versa. I feel like I've always really, really enjoyed, like, my colors a lot. It's always been something I felt pretty confident about. I sometimes I'll look back at my artwork that I made when I was super young, like 10, 11, 12. And I mean, the color is, like, one of the only things that, like, really still holds up. I really felt like coming to this piece and seeing an unfinished coloring book canvas for me to play around with, I had a lot of fun with it. I would say similar to my current coloring style for my more detailed pieces, but I really just loved the expressions, the energy. I felt like it was so dull without color. I don't know. You do a lot of sketching more so than, like, final pieces.
Yes. I definitely prioritize sketches over finished work. So color is not my big forte, but that's definitely where we split off.
I can't do, like, I get so sad seeing, like, unfinished sketches in my Google Photos and my sketchbook and stuff like that. I just hate it. I was just so mad. I was like, I can't believe I let this simmer in there for so long. It was really sad. I did notice, I think the sketch is from the original sketch and the original line work was from about 6 months ago. Which, not a lot of time, all things considered. I want to say this was about May of last year, actually. So a little bit longer than 6 months. Because that is when I got a new laptop, and I had to transfer all of my files over from the other laptop. And I think this is one of those things that got lost in the fray during that. To be honest, it really still holds up a ton, like, comparatively to my art that I've made more recently. It isn't perfect. It's very fun, it's very lively. But there's a few minor issues here and there that I don't know if you've ever done this, but, like, if you ever look at a piece of art you've made and you see, like, key flaw, like, you're like, oh man. If anyone pointed this
Oh
out,
yeah.
I would
Oh
like
yeah,
die
all
on the
the time.
floor. If you kind of squint, if you kind of tilt your head, Princess Peach's parasol is clipping through her hair, and I saw that like 8 different times, and I just decided not to deal with it. I think I think what I was going for in the original sketch did not actually compensate for the fact that her hair would be there. Because typically I like to do my figure first. For anyone who's like not very like artistically inclined or knows what that process can be like, you got your rough outline where you sort of figure out what you're doing. A couple phases after that where you continue to try to figure it out. A little bit after that where you're like, okay, I can clean it up now. Coloring, bada bing, bada boom, everything else. And I think I drew the base figure for this, and then I was like, oh my gosh, wouldn't it be so cute if she was holding her parasol? But I had already drawn her hair, and I never really thought about it further than that until I looked back at it, and I was like, I'm not fixing that. And then another thing, Mario's hand, when outstretched pointing towards Peach, is a little bit wonky. I probably could have cleaned that up a little bit more. And I spent a ton of time on it. For how simple it is and uncomplicated this process was, I was really slow. I think I took around 6 hours just to color it. I was busy. I was doing some other things too at the time, but I definitely will say, comparatively, I color much faster than that on a good day. But hey, I really did have a lot of fun. I did miss doing the detail work I usually do. It's one of my favorite pieces I've done recently. I can't say this is like the future of my art though. Yeah, I think that's mostly what I would say. Really cute, really got a nice storybook look to it, but there are some flaws here and there, and it's definitely not something I would really dedicate myself to making.
Yeah, I think if I had to give like commentary on this, I would say very similar things to what you pointed out as my favorite parts. I do really love the colors. I think especially on Peach, they're very appealing. You have this really great balance of like vivid colors that don't, hurt your eyes. They still feel very soft. I think your work with style in this piece is very effective, especially for characters that are so iconic as Mario and Peach. Like really refining them down
Thank
into
you.
your style is very well done. I think Mario especially is notable because he's very readable as Mario, but he's also readable as something you've made. Um, I also really love just the subtle texture included through like the grass in the background. I think it's really cool and it works really well.
Thank you so much. Yeah, if you wanna move on to your piece now, I think that would be a good time to switch over.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess as like an introduction to this piece, I work a lot with, character art, similarly to how you do. Um, and so I wanted this piece, going into it, I knew I wanted to do a classroom setting. I knew I wanted to have a single character sort of as like the centerpiece looking up at the camera, and I wanted the character to also be in perspective. Um, and I've only done maybe 2 or 3 other pieces. I want to say maybe just 2 pieces that included a background and character in perspective. Um, and that was really what I wanted to do going into it. That was my big experiment, was sort of playing around with that, especially in a way that wasn't too rigid. Um, so I really wanted to give it a sense of flow that I get in a lot of my gesture sketches, sort of gestures in backgrounds, which is something I've never really done before.
Would you say this is like in or like out of your comfort zone? I feel like my Mario and Peach drawing is like weirdly mashed between the two sections, and I'm not sure where it falls. How do you feel about yours?
I'm in a similar place with mine, I would say. The thing is, I do have a lot of experience with putting a form in perspective. So putting, human figures, and like limbs and torsos in perspective. So the figure here was not a challenge, but it was a challenge to make sure that this form looked properly proportioned within the altered perspective of this piece.
Yeah, it was not an idle thought process. You had to actually sit down and think about, okay, how is his torso going to look in perspective? How is this hand going to look in perspective? Stuff like that.
Exactly. I'd say it's especially notable with the arms. Because while this isn't a very extreme perspective, it is subtle, like, enough if you mess up the arms that you'll notice that he is, like, out of perspective if I mess it up.
A little bit wonky, perhaps.
Yeah. And so I would say, like, when I sort of went at this piece, I knew what I was doing, and it was a very similar workflow to what I'm used to. So I'd say it only took me around 2 to 3 hours, probably closer to 3.
Yeah, much different to my 6 hours coloring,
yes.
But, whatever.
But I also do tend to work faster than you do historically. Just based on our process.
The records may show.
Just based on our personal process.
Would you say, like, the perspective is, like, your favorite part of it? Like, what are your favorite aspects of it? That was, like, my favorite. That was my favorite as well.
I think the perspective work is pretty good. I do enjoy the inclusion of the background and the details of having a background in this piece. But I also do genuinely enjoy the look of the central character. I think he has a really good expression, something that sort of, fits the setting around him. And I think he just generally looks very strong in terms of, like, how well he is placed within the piece and how he just looks as a character.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think I would probably say, yeah, I loved the expression. It's honestly a pretty simple expression, I think, if you were to look at it with an untrained eye. Not to sound pretentious, but it's an art podcast. It's going to be pretentious. You really nailed, like, the little micro expressions in his, like, eyebrow and his mouth. The way it's all sort of downturned, but he's looking up. It gives a nice exaggerated effect that I really like seeing in your work. I mean, beyond that, too, the little details are just so, like, I love the little flowers. I feel like you gave a lot of life to the piece by adding, like, visible people in the background. You could have just gone with a desk and not had that little hand there or the little feet beneath the desk, and no one would have called you on it, but I really do appreciate the little touches. It's just very appealing to the eye, all things considered. I think we both played around a bit within our comfort zones, but, like, a couple teeny tiny steps out. With you, it was more conscious thinking of perspective. And then I feel like I enjoy my cutesy look that I went for, the stylization. Like I said, not really what I'm wanting for my art overall. I really missed my little details, but ultimately I really love my piece a lot. And obviously, expression, flowers, people in the background of your piece. Those are my top 3 things of the piece.
Yeah, and mine for you are definitely the color, that subtle texture, and your effective use of stylization.
What's your main takeaway from your piece, would you say, for yourself?
I definitely think I want to keep working with perspective in this way, pushing my line art and coloring to be a little cleaner in these kind of contexts, to make something that feels really raw and finished.
All right. Well, I think we're just about time. So, well, thank you anybody who's listened to the first episode of the Passive Portfolio podcast. Next episode, we'll be discussing art for profit, which is a fun little thing we threw at the beginning of the show. People do that. Shocking, right? Yeah. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.